Do you want to learn how to steal customer credit card information from major retailers so you can buy anything you want?
Well, we can't help you with that. But among the many IT problems we solve, Barracuda's award-winning firewalls prevent hackers from taking your valuable data to the bank. Reclaim your network like 150,000 other businesses have. To learn more about protecting customer data and your reputation, visit barracuda.com/firewalls.
Hey there, Dari Nowkhah in for Paul today. Coming up on the Best of the Paul Finebaum Show podcast, Arkansas head football coach Bret Bielema stops by. We try to figure out why Missouri gets no respect. Is it the program's Midwestern roots? And, of course, your phone calls.
This is the Best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
A guy that I am a huge fan of. Always enjoy talking to him, always enjoy seeing him. We've talked a lot about Arkansas. He is the Razorbacks head football coach, Bret Bielema. Coach, always good talking to you, sir. How do you assess the spring at this point, now that it's come and gone?
You know what, Dari? We got through 15 practices, first off, injury-free. We're able to go through that, which is huge. But I think what really came out of the spring is some of our newer players. You know, we lost 11 guys this past weekend to the draft and free agency, so we have a lot of really good players that left us. But those guys stepping into those roles, a guy like Markel Spade, who led the SEC in tackles, he's now with the Washington Redskins. But Brooks Ellis, I think, could give us an equal opportunity to maybe make as many plays, if not a little bit more. Guys like JaMychal Winston, you know, Trey Flowers is a really good player who left us, but JaMychal had a nice spring stepping into that role of defensive end, and some other guys as well. So that was what the fun part was as a coach for me.
Brett, aside from the defensive departures there, what's the biggest question that you feel you still need to get answered once fall practices begin?
You know, I think O-line depth, we have a really good front five that I feel strong about, but as we all know, the world of football, there's injuries, there's the unforeseen and things like that. So O-line depth and linebacker depth are probably my biggest two concerns. Really got to have either some of the younger players coming into the program or some other players that are on the verge of maybe coming through for us. Have a great summer and get ready for a great fall camp.
You look at running backs in this conference, that seems to be the position of strength when you look at Nick Chubb and Leonard Fournette, Derrick Henry at Alabama, and then your two horses, Jonathan Williams and Alex Collins. There's been a lot said and a lot of great stories about how the two of them are such great teammates and friends, and they love sharing the load. How do you as a head coach go about deciding who's playing when?
You know, I think it's a way to kind of work itself out. Competition brings the both out of one of them, you know, out of each other. So we actually have a third guy emerge during the spring, Cody Walker, who I think is a 1,000-yard rusher as well. You know, I think in our path, you got to make sure you recruit the right type of kid. So you got to have a kid that, you know, doesn't want the I, me. You understand it's a we approach at Arkansas, and that starts it. But then also, you know, just telling them and sharing with them, hey, you don't want to be the guy that's in there for a run that could go to the house and you get dragged down at 20 because you're tired. They should let their buddy go in there when he knows he's at his freshest, and it's a rotation that's shown to work over time.
How do you describe what you're hearing, reading in the state from fans, from whoever, about the expectations that are now on your shoulders?
They're definitely changed. That's been a nice thing. I always say high expectations are better than low expectations. Sounds like a good country song, but that's true. It really it shows the progress we've made, and the great thing is we're, you know, 7-6 team that's getting a little bit of pub that I think could make a dramatic increase, not just in our conference, but also nationally. You know, we're in a league that if you win in this league and win the way that we want to win, you're right in the middle of the national title hunt. And I'm not saying we're there yet, but I know we're swinging and knocking at the door, and it's fun to see that hard work does pay off. You do things right in the right way, good things will happen to you, and hopefully that's what we're going to see in 2015.
Coach, I know you've always, one of the things you've talked about since the day you walked into Fayetteville is that your players are buying in. You deliver a message, they take it, they run with it. But I can imagine still, in the midst of a 9-game losing streak in year number 1 or a tough start in year number 2 before you turn things around, you had to have seen some difference in the locker room and the way they carry themselves. What do you see from this team now, or when you left them in the spring, compared to what you saw when it was difficult in terms of to each individual player?
You know what, Dar, we were getting ready for our biggest Saturday scrimmage in week 4 of the spring, And I'd watched the Tuesday and Thursday practice where I was just blown away when I was watching the film afterwards and then after the practice and how they practiced, how they looked, the coachability that they had, the ability that they lined up and did things right. And then I archived our films from 2 springs ago when we first got here, and I showed 5 plays of inside drill, it works on the run game, and 5 plays of Skelly, which works on the throwing game. Mm-hmm. And then I coupled it with 5 plays from Tuesday and Thursday's practices. And it was a lot of the same players doing things incredibly different, look different, act different, and obviously the results were different. And it showed our players how much growth they've had. The players coming in, they know they got to buy in right away, otherwise they're going to be left behind. It's just a real fun time to be a part of the culture.
All right, Brett, forget football for a minute here. Summer's coming. I know you never really have a lot of downtime, but maybe you'll get a little bit here. What's the biggest thing on your to-do list this summer?
My wife has decided to go through a reconstruction project in my home, our home, that required us moving out of our house for 2 months, and so we're in a little remodeling phase here in the Bielema household. So that's my daily to-do list to make sure that I'm on top of things there. I'm really just in a spectator mode, to be quite honest. But we'll get through that, and you know what's neat is they allow us by NCAA rules to have some Hogganese all summer, so we'll have 2 classes a week on the Hogganese and get a chance to be around our guys and team build. So that's going to be a huge part of it.
I love the Hogganese. Now, tell me if you're like me in this. I come home. I was at the NFL draft in Chicago, Brett. I come home, and she goes, "You're not going to believe what I did to our bedroom." And I walk up there, and she's always taken pride in not making it too, as she says, too girly.
Right.
And yeah, right. So, but she moved these dressers from one room to another, and our room suddenly looks, I don't know, 70% more girly than it did before. But I don't care. I'm like, if you're happy, I don't care. It's a bedroom to me, and it's got a bed, and you know what? Hey, I'm fine with that. Is that your situation too with your Jen? Because that's how it is with mine.
I know. I didn't coin the phrase, but happy wife, happy life means a lot to all of us. So I really don't care. You know, I love my bedroom to have a nice shower, good water pressure, and have a little bit of access to the hot tub, and then really for the kitchen, I love to cook and relax. So if we can do that, and I can do that with success, I don't have any problem with what it looks like.
That's it. I'm with you. Brett Bielema, good talking to you as always, Coach.
Thank you, Dar. I appreciate it. Whoop-pig. Have a good weekend.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Let's do it. Larry and Shelby. Good afternoon, Larry.
Hey, man, what's up?
You tell me.
Hey, you ain't going to have Jim complain about you today, I don't believe.
Well, you know what? I got a tweet from Jim. Hang on. Let me find it here. Hang on. I just haven't replied to it yet. I will. I don't want to hurt his feelings. But, hey, pal, I tried to get in on hold through 3 callers to talk about Florida hire of White. Guess you didn't want my input. That's okay. That was the tweet from Jim.
Oh, man.
He's not going to like that you got in, though.
Oh, God, no. But you know, I'm probably the best caller on this show, in my opinion. You know?
I got you.
I'm serious, man.
Well,
I'm the best. I'm better, you know, that's the way it is. Jim needs to just get that second place and live with it, you know? But,
he gets the red ribbon and you get the blue. We're going to need more ribbons, Larry. I don't do this show often, but I can appreciate the fact that we're going to need more ribbons because there are people that if they don't get ribbons, we're going to have a real problem on our hands, Larry.
Boo-hoo. You got the boo-hooers, man. I mean, they want to be, you know, the best and always, but I tell them, hey, you never beat me. Laugh and Shelby. I'm the mayor of Shelby. And, like, if you be, you know, I could put you on my city council, dude. You know what I'm saying? I mean, okay. I got pull. But I want to say, holler out a friend of mine named Fred. I just got off the bus coming back from the VA.
Okay.
And holler at him, man, and my buddy Cameron Martin, a scratch golfer, dude. Have you ever played with a scratch golfer?
I have. It's painful. Whoa. It's humbling. It's did I say painful? Yeah. And I tell you what, the worst thing about it is I feel like I'm just I can do no right. I feel like I'm taking what would be a 3-hour round for him and making it 4.5 because it takes me. It's awful, Larry. It's terrible.
And his girlfriend Emily was there, and it was more embarrassing. And he would hit the ball so dang far. We didn't have much conversation.
You were not sharing a cart, were you?
I couldn't even hardly see him. He hit it so far. But you know what? I didn't get in a fight on the golf course. I know Finebaum be proud of it. But one guy had an Auburn golf ball, and I said, "Let me see that." And I picked it up and I threw it in the woods. Trying to get in the woods, dude.
Wait, hang on. I want to hear about this. You fought a guy on a golf course. Can you give me that story?
The what? The fight I had?
Yeah, I haven't heard the fight yet. So tell me about the fight on the golf course.
17 tee-box, man. Oh, oh my God. That was better than Mayweather and Pac-Man. Dude, hey, it was a ball. He was drunk. He won't take a mulligan. I wouldn't let him. He started pushing me. I got him in a headlock, and 17th tee box rolls down to a pond, a big hill. We rolled down that hill and fought and scratched and fought. Got up, shook herself off, and went back to playing golf.
And you guys were fine the rest of the day? Wait,
well, one more hole, but he had 2 black eyes.
Did he get his mulligan?
No.
All right.
I told you what,
Larry, good talking to you, man. I appreciate the phone call.
Sir. Roll Tide, brother.
There you go. I love it. That's one thing that is I've not even seen a fight on a golf course outside of Adam Sandler and Bob Barker, and we remember the line of that one. Let's go to Victor in South Bend, Indiana. Plenty of talk about Victor's old quarterback, if indeed he's a Notre Damer. Victor?
Yes, thanks for letting me call.
Sure.
What my question was is there a place in the SEC for Everett Golston? And if there is, where is it at? And will they bend the rules to allow him to attend one of those schools and play football?
Yeah,
because that's the big question.
That's a huge question, and that's one of the things we've talked about a lot today. Is there a home for him? Yes. You tell me that he couldn't jump in and probably start at South Carolina, start at Georgia, maybe probably start at LSU, probably start at Florida. I mean, there are places now. What coach will bring him in, given the fact that he turned it over 22 times last year? 4 interceptions, by the way, returned for touchdowns. A pick 6 is an indication of a horrible decision, and so that's certainly a concern. But the rules thing, does Mike Slive allow him in when a rule states that he shouldn't, months, weeks before he leaves after an incredibly successful tenure as commissioner? Brett McMurphy doesn't seem to think so, and I don't seem to think so. I want to go one more real quick. Let's go Jesse in Winter Haven, Florida. Hey, Jesse, you got, I don't know, you got a little time here. 1 minute.
Hey, Dari Nowkhah, I got a couple questions for you. I'm a big Florida Gator fan,
okay.
And I just want to ask you, what do you think the Gators are going to do in football? I think they're going to get 10 wins.
Okay.
For the basketball team, I think that was a good fit for the Gators hiring Michael White.
Yeah, I like the fit for basketball. I do. I think the guy can flat out coach. And I go by, because I work with so many basketball people and ex-coaches. And I know a lot of current coaches. And anybody I talk to about him loves him. So that's a good sign. Football, people were jumping on the 10-win bandwagon before last season. I said 8. I think I wouldn't go 10 for football now. I think the offense will be better, but we thought that last year. I think it will with McElwain. We don't know who the quarterback's going to be. Key losses on defense. I'm not buying it yet.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
David in Anderson, South Carolina. Good afternoon, David.
Dory, how you doing? I appreciate you taking my phone call.
Sure thing.
I'd like to ask you a question about this quarterback up at Notre Dame. He was kicked out of school for a year for cheating on a test.
Yep.
And Notre Dame took him back, and evidently he mended his ways because he graduated. And the question I want to ask you about the SEC, what is their policy on present players that they get caught cheating on tests?
Well, that's a great question. I don't know the answer to that.
And
my hunch is school-by-school basis. They can control who comes into the schools, all right? But once you're established in the school, I don't think the same thing stands. I don't know that, but I'm assuming that's the case.
And, Dory, if I could ask you one more question, just an example. This thing in Georgia last year, they kicked this player off the team for supposedly beating up his girlfriend. Well, Alabama gave him a second chance.
Right.
Isn't that worse than somebody cheating on a test?
That's a great point. That's a great point. You're exactly right. I can't argue that. I can't argue that Alabama shouldn't have given him a chance. Let me say this, David. I'm sorry. The rule is it's not. Let me read. I'm going to read this to you again. I read this earlier. I'm going to read this again. Bylaw 14.1.15.1 requires that the, quote, student athlete has not been subject to official university or athletics department disciplinary action at any time during enrollment at any previous collegiate institution, end quote. Official university or athletics department disciplinary action. You're right. This is not clear. Why a player could be kicked out of Georgia and land at Alabama when Everett Golson could not land there out of Notre Dame. I don't know if it's an intra-conference situation. Cam Newton, folks, Cam Newton, Heisman Trophy National Championship, out of an SEC school, JUCO, into an SEC school. And by the way, it doesn't matter if it had just happened and that or if it happened 2 years ago and he was back in good standing. The fact for Golson is it happened, period. So there has to be an exception made. Make a great point.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Geico presents Strange Savings Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Right now we bring in Mr. College Football, Tony Barnhart. Tony, I've become more confused the more I've read about this Golson situation and this SEC bylaw. Because as it states that the student-athlete must not have been subject to official university or athletics department disciplinary action at any time during enrollment at a previous collegiate institution. Where's the difference? Because we just had a phenomenal question asked by a caller. In Jonathan Taylor being booted from Georgia and landing at Alabama briefly, and Golson being suspended from Notre Dame and landing in the SEC. Because it doesn't say it's academic only. It also says athletics department.
No, I think that's a good question. I reached out to somebody in the SEC yesterday. I said, now, let me try to get me clear on this. And basically what I was told there was that it's put in place so that somebody who's had some real academic issues, or got caught cheating, okay, for example, is not automatically allowed in. There's got to be a waiver process and all that. So it's and when you compare it to the Jonathan Taylor thing, I got to admit to you, Dari, that I'm confused about that. So I put it this way: I believe that if somebody wants to take Everett Golson, there will be an appeals process, and the waiver more than likely will be granted. I just don't see him headed to an SEC school, but we'll see.
You don't see? How come? Why don't you see it?
I just think that everybody, first of all, his last year, he was a turnover machine last year. That's number one. And I think everybody else, when you look at it, maybe LSU, someplace where they just have had very, very bad quarterback play. But I just don't see Everett Golson being a fit. But again, I could be wrong.
Yeah, he's going to have options. I mean, that's the 22 turnovers last year. You can't deny that. You can't explain that away. You can't make a good excuse for that. There's no question about that. I know you just spent some time in Oxford and in Starkville. Let's start with Oxford here in Ole Miss. What was the biggest takeaway in spending some time there on your college football tour?
Well, to be clear, I didn't get a chance to go some places on my tour, Dari. I got to 9 of the schools. Oxford was one of the places I didn't get to go to, but I did talk to Hugh Freeze. I did talk to Laquan Treadwell, and other people have been there. And look, Ole Miss, I think, is going to get some dark horse votes in the SEC West. I think because of their defensive front and the depth they had could be as good as anybody in the country. It's not just Ken Dinty. You got a lot of guys who could play on that front. And if Treadwell is anything close to 100%, and he told me that he thought he was getting there. He can run with a little discomfort. But if Treadwell is anywhere close to 100%, then they're set up pretty nicely. So they're excited. At Mississippi State, I did get to Starkville. It's a totally interesting mindset there because they refuse to believe they're going to take a step back. With Dak Prescott there, they believe they've recruited well enough and played enough guys last year to still be in the hunt. I think it's going to be an interesting story.
Tony Barnhart's with us, Dari Nowkhah in for Paul Finebaum show. That's great that they don't anticipate a drop. I think they may be in the minority. A lot of people do expect them to. I keep feeling like at Ole Miss, Tony, that there may be it's now or it's never feeling there. Do you get that at all in talking to them?
Well, one of the things you have to look at is that great freshman class of 2 years ago. Those guys are juniors, all right? Kim Dinty, Tony Connor, Treadwell, Laramie Tunsil, all those guys. So that's number one. They still recruited well, but nothing, not like that class. So that's number one. Number two, they were so close a year ago. If Treadwell scores against Auburn, who knows how the rest of that season unfolds.
Yep.
And so I think they feel like if they can find a quarterback, if Chad Kelly ends up being the guy when all is said and done, or somebody to give them at least pretty good production, they feel like this is their year.
Missouri never gets love. All they've done is win the last 2 division championships, Tony. How much should we buy Missouri?
Well, we need to show them some love because of what they've done. But if you sit there and look at it, as I said in my column today, I just don't see that anybody picking Missouri because they've lost too much. They lost a couple of pros up front on the defensive front. Matty Mock is a fun quarterback to watch, but he tends to make plays. He makes a great play, then he'll make a play that makes your head just absolutely shake. Only completing about 51 and 52% of his passes. That's not good enough. So, but then having said that, hey, they weren't supposed to do it last year either, and they did. I think Gary Pinkel's a really good coach, and they've been producing a good number of pros. So I think when all is said and done, Dari, I'm going to do my picks next Friday. I will be very surprised if Georgia's not on top in the SEC East.
It feels that way to me, too. My issue, Tony, is in the West because I think there are 5 teams that could win it, to be honest with you. I think Auburn, Arkansas, Alabama, A&M is, I think, being vastly overlooked and dangerously so in LSU. I don't buy Ole Miss as much as you're suggesting. Maybe I should. But I think the West is once again wide open. I don't think that's good for the SEC when it comes to playing for a national championship, but it makes for an entertaining regular season.
It's going to be so good and so balanced. That's the thing. Because Arkansas, listen, Dari, nobody wanted to play Arkansas at the end of last year. Okay, They just didn't. They were too big, too strong. They did a great job on the defensive side of the ball. I talked to Coach Bielema and Rob Smith over there, and they feel pretty good about where they are. I think Texas A&M, we know they can move the ball. And I think just talking to John Chavis, I'm doing my column next week with him. He feels pretty good about where they are. And so, I think I think the West is wide. I think Auburn with Jeremy Johnson is going to be significantly better offensively. You can believe that, and they got to be better on defense. Yeah. So, and Alabama is just reloading with high school All-Americans who just been waiting on their turn to play. And I think Lane Kiffin's going to figure out the quarterback situation. So I think it's going to be unbelievable.
You have a front runner at Alabama to start at quarterback?
I think you got to go with Coker because the guy has played. Okay, I mean they've got some other guys. I just think when all is said and done, you go with the guy who's played a little bit. But I just think that Kiffin did such a good job with Blake Sims last year. I am not as concerned about the quarterback position as I am about the secondary at Alabama. I'm more concerned about Alabama was not very good on 3rd and long a year ago, and they got to fix that. And I'm a little bit more concerned where they can get better in the secondary.
Tony, I'll tell you this. I was down in Tuscaloosa 2-3 weeks ago for a SEC Network spring tour, and saw practice, and I was just asking people, and not coaches here. I was not asking a coach, but there were a whole bunch of people around, and I kept asking the question, who do you feel is the front runner? Thinking that they would say Coker. And I'll tell you who I got answered more than anybody else. David Cornwell.
Yeah.
That he has had.
Yep.
Yep, has had the best spring. It's going to be fun to watch how this all shakes out down there in Tuscaloosa again.
Well, and here's the other thing. They think their front seven could be as good as they've had since they've been there. And that's the other big thing.
It should be. Tony, good talking to you, bud.
All right, Dari. Take care.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
We were just discussing why Missouri doesn't get much love. And in Hayes' hot corner, John Hayes suggested perhaps that it's because people in the South don't really relate to what Missouri is, right, John? A Midwestern program. The people are different. The culture is different. The weather is different. It just doesn't feel like an SEC place. And maybe that continues to hold people back in terms of why they don't give them credit. Is that it?
Yeah, absolutely. You think about the SEC, it's a family. It's a part of the country that holds football close to their heart, where they look at each other. Yeah, they hate each other on Saturdays, but when they're not playing each other, they stick up for one another. Yeah. They're not ready to stick up for Mizzou.
To be fair, though, I remember this. I don't think they welcomed South Carolina in with open arms. I remember Paul telling me he wrote an article how, like 7 years after South Carolina joined the SEC, he wrote an article that they should be kicked out of the SEC.
Well, they didn't have success. That's the problem. Mizzou comes right in and has that.
They had a Heisman Trophy winner, but they haven't. What success have they had? They haven't won the East.
No, that's my point. When South Carolina was brought in, they didn't have any success. So you're saying, okay, you bring in this program, they're not doing anything. So why are they here to begin with? Mizzou comes into the SEC and takes the East by storm. 2 straight trips to Atlanta, and still no fan base in the conference wants to look at Mizzou and say, oh, they're a threat in 2015.
Yeah, but keep in mind last year, they did not beat a single team with a winning record in the regular season. So that's something you can't ignore. They lost at home to Indiana, something you can't ignore. I think to get credit in this league, you either have to have a deep history of success and national championships, or you have to come through in a given season and beat the doors off of teams, off of powers. You know what? If Missouri goes a year and they beat Alabama, Auburn, and Georgia, maybe they'll get that credit. Maybe it changes. But until they do that, they're going to be seen as a champion in a division that's weak, relatively speaking, that has benefited from weak scheduling and can get away with a home loss to Indiana because, well, it's not a conference game. They're battling that. They've got to start beating legitimate, powerful teams over and over again. I think that's what it's going to take. I mean, I don't know how it could go any other way. Ron in St. Louis. Hey, Ron.
Hey, Dari. I just want to get some things clear, man. I'm hearing Big Ten John talking about the cultural dynamic and Missouri being West and Midwest. Let me tell you something. You come to St. Louis, you come to the Boot Hill going south, Cape Girardeau, you can draw a circle from St. Louis Southern and on towards the Boot Hill, the southeastern part of the state. St. Louis, the urban communities, is Southern culturally. More closer to Tennessee, New Orleans. It's nothing Western. I mean, it's nothing Western and nothing Midwestern about St. Louis. St. Louis is the South, the cultural heritage, the people's descendants, the lifestyle. St. Louis and further south towards the Boot Hill, Cape Girardeau, you in the South, buddy. This is the Mid-South, really. And actually, Kentucky, parts of Kentucky on the geographical map is further northern than us. And so, believe me, it's nothing. Ain't nothing Midwestern, Nothing western about St. Louis. Trust me, St. Louis is akin to Memphis, New Orleans, the community that once you get in the St. Louis part, the Cape Girardeau part, the southeastern, and the St. Louis on south, towards the Iowa border, it's a totally different state. You can draw it in half.
Ron, hang on just a second here. John, my hunch is you weren't really talking about St. Louis, but go ahead, John.
I'm just thinking from a national perspective. When you ask anybody, I guess, where Mizzou is in respect to college football, what culture do they fall into? Is it still the Big 12 culture, or is it the Southern SEC culture? I think most people would say when they think about Mizzou, they think about the Big 12.
Ron, go ahead.
Yeah, well, people are blanking it with this brush like Missouri is Laura Ingalls with hats on and the little house on the prairie. Let me tell you something, man. St. Louis is just as country as they get. Let me tell you something. It's just as country as Louisiana, just as country as Tennessee. Believe me, the urban communities from St. Louis and towards the boot hill, you talking about some draws, the southern draws will cut you up on the boot hill and Cape Girardeau and on up towards St. Louis. Trust me. Trust me when I tell you. St. Louis is a totally, you can draw this state and cut it in half. The Iowa border, the Kansas, yeah, that's western, that's plainish. But trust me, once you're in the St. Louis area, Cape Girardeau, the southeastern, the southeastern third of the state from St. Louis on south, this is the south part, or the mid-south, just like Tennessee. Tennessee is the mid-south. This is not the true deep south. St. Louis, culturally and geographically, the same thing. Deep south, and especially Cape Girardeau, let me tell you, there's nothing Midwestern about it. It's two different cultures. It's 5 hours to Kansas City to St. Louis, at least 4.5 hours.
Ron, I'm not going to argue. Ron, I'm not going to argue with you, and Dari, I think you would agree that Ron is probably right about St. Louis. He's been there for a long time, and he knows probably more than I do. I've spent barely any time in St. Louis, but what I have done is travel to every campus in the SEC, and there's no question that there's a different feel at Mizzou come November than there is at other places in the SEC.
I know this too. I have great respect all of a sudden for SEMO. Which is located in Cape Girardeau, Missouri. So Southeast Missouri State perhaps should consider petitioning for entrance into the SEC. I get Ron's point, but John, I'm on your side on this thing. Now, I'm a Big 12 guy, like by nature. Big 8. I grew up an Oklahoma fan. I went to Oklahoma. It was Big 8, Big 12. Okay, and in the last few years between ESPNU and the SEC network, I've dealt more and worked more, obviously, with the SEC than any other league. I think Missouri, to this day, and I still picture their schedule and wonder when they're playing in Norman. It's a fact. I do. I mean, I know they're in the SEC, but I still don't see Nebraska as a Big 10 school. They are an SEC school, and they have adjusted incredibly well, and they've represented themselves very well. I think Gary Pinkel is a top, be careful here because you're going to start throwing out names, 5 to 8 coach nationally. They are SEC worthy. There's no question about it. I'm just saying it's going to take a few years before we all fully get that through our heads. I think that's what I'm saying. Brett in Sarasota. Hey, Brett.
Hey. When Mizzou wins an SEC championship, they'll be accepted.
Well, that'd be a start. Yeah, no, that'd be a heck of a start. I agree. I agree.
I'm from Florida, followed Florida since 1979, 0-10-1, tied Georgia Tech, and followed Florida all the way through it. Georgia, everybody else in the South. Mizzou's not in the South, hasn't been in the South. They come in the South, win the East. That's not enough.
To your first point, winning a conference title is a start. It's a heck of a start. But I'm going to stand by this. I think Missouri could go 10 years without winning a conference championship. But beat Alabama a couple times, beat Georgia a few times. I know they have already. Start hammering Auburn a little bit, beat up on Tennessee. Don't let Arkansas surpass you. Then maybe you'll start getting some cred, even if you don't win a conference title. You've won the East 2 years in a row. That's great. But, yes, there has to be more deep tradition, and you got to beat the big boys, right? You got to beat the big boys. Yeah.
That's all right.
Going to Atlanta, out of the SEC East, as it's been for the last 2 or 3 years, is nice but it doesn't make you an automatic championship-level program. It doesn't. And I'm saying this matter-of-factly without trying to slight Missouri, and I think that's impossible to do. But please understand, that's not what I'm trying to do. I have nothing but respect for that program. Lines are lit up, 855-242-7285. More of your calls. That kind of took I didn't expect that, but hey, it's Finebaum Friday.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
ESPN Radio.
With the action on the court, the diamond, or the gridiron.
Comes alive.
The NBA.
The San Antonio Spurs are the world champions.
Major League Baseball.
San Francisco Giants are the champions of the baseball world.
The new college football playoff.
College football playoff national champion, the Ohio State Buckeyes.
You're home for the best in sports play-by-play.
ESPN Radio.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Larry in Missouri. I'm going all phone calls right here. Larry, good to talk to you.
Hey, Dari, how you getting along today?
Well, I'm good. Who's going to be starting for our Sooners, Larry, at quarterback? Any ideas here?
Yeah, it's Baker Mayfield all the way. And I know he's struggled in the spring, but he's got experience.
Yep.
Knight, he just can't cut it. I mean, if he could stay healthy, I think he can help him. But I did want to, first off, I had to shout out to the great Alan Trimble, down there.
Oh, boy.
This old boy's got more rings. He's got a couple on his toes now. I mean, there ain't nobody got more rings than him. And my old high school football coach gave him his first job at Owasso way back in the day. So I wanted
At Owasso. Larry, do you know where I went to high school?
No, where'd you go?
I went to Union. Yeah. So Alan Trimble and Jinx they keep beating us up a little bit, but we've had our share as well.
Right. If they don't win it, Union will. Hey, I did want to say, as far as Oklahoma football, and I don't know SEC Network, but they're flying under the radar. They're going to be pretty doggone good. You put P. Ryan and Nixon back there. Nobody's seen him. He's going to help them. They obviously got problems on defense, and I was kind of surprised that they didn't make any changes. Sorry we lost Montgomery, but I think they're going to fly under the radar and be pretty good. And as far as now I live here in St. Louis, been there 20 years, over on there. I mean, St. Louis couldn't be farther from the South. I mean, if they're in the South, Oklahoma's freaking Brazil. I mean, there's nothing south about
But I
this
think
place.
now, geographically, probably not. But he's saying southern part of St. Louis on down to the border is more south.
Right. In any state, there's little pockets that are kind of redneck. And granted, we have those. But, I mean, in general, basically what happened here, Mizzou keeps winning the freaking East all the time. They got the best coach. It's just simple as that. And SEC's really mad at Mizzou because they thought they was going to wipe them out, and it's turned out to be just the opposite. So, they don't like the fact that an old Big 12 team come in here and didn't have no problem with them. That's the problem.
Yeah.
And the last thing I'll say, Dari, I did want to have a little shout-out. It's been 5 years ago to this day that I met Mickey Mantle down at Bricktown, and he looked damn good for that guy. Thanks.
Yeah, Boomer Center. Always good talking to Larry. I agree. I believe Baker Mayfield will get the start, the Texas Tech transfer at Oklahoma. And I've also learned from years of being a Sooner fan and a Sooner grad, I will not go into a season and say, look out for Oklahoma. I will be there as they're doing it, but I will not sit and say, look out for Oklahoma. We've all been burned too many times before. My first time in weeks to talk to I-Man. Good afternoon, sir.
Dari, how's it going? Hope everything's well.
Thank you.
If Missouri is not an SEC team, I don't know who is. They have clearly dominated the East Division. And that's just too bad for Tennessee, Georgia, Florida, South Carolina, Kentucky, Vanderbilt. It's just too bad because they aren't good enough to step up. And, I was listening to Mr. College Football. I like that. Mr. College Football. If you don't pick Missouri to win the East after winning it twice, and these other teams have fallen on their own sword some kind of way, I think you're backing up. And you might even want to pick Tennessee in the mix because Georgia is clearly not good enough to do it. and won't do it, and they should have owned that division since Fulmer left Tennessee and Spurrier left Florida, or Urban Meyer, rather. I mean, they should have owned that division. So, the clear pick is Missouri or Tennessee. And you got to take Alabama out of the mix in the West because they have a schedule now. They've been given a pass for the last 4 or 5 years, and you take Mississippi State out because they don't have much, and then go on and take Mississippi out. Who cares what they got coming back? Good bow, bad bow, no bow. I mean, it's 4 teams: LSU, Auburn, A&M, LSU. That's who's going to win the West. And when you're talking to Larry from Missouri and y'all talking about high school, I mean, don't forget, y'all may get the greatest high school nobody of the world call in and talk about how great he was, and that's Jim from Tuscaloosa. But he hurt his hand. And he hurt his hand to the point that he couldn't hold the ball. He couldn't stiff arm. He couldn't prop himself up. He couldn't, slam dunk or shoot a pool stick or something. And if his hand was so bad, why in the hell didn't he just join Ringling Brothers and be Club Fist? Go ahead, have a great day.
Hi, man. Good to hear from you.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Cole Kubelik joining us. Of course, a contributor on SEC Network, of course, has his radio show in Alabama as well. And you sent out a tweet a little bit ago, Cole, that I read. I saw it. I read it on the air, that you were going to shock us with your picks in the 2 divisions this year. I don't want you to give your picks yet. But first of all, what about the particular favorites has you concerned enough not to take them? Because I assume you're not taking favorites here with a tweet like that.
There's a lot of people here in the state of Alabama have some interesting things to say about myself as a former Auburn player and what I think about the Auburn Tigers sometimes. So that might make one selection a little bit interesting. But I think there's big concerns with every team in the conference, and that's East and West. And that's going to be every season that we go into. We're going to be able to point fingers and say, hey, what do we not like about this team, or this guy's not returning? I think it's hilarious when people just count returning starters, because if you have returning starters that weren't good, they're probably not going to be good the next year. Guys can develop and get better and improve, but I don't think that automatically puts you into the SEC title game. So there's major concerns everywhere, so I think you have to do some addition by subtraction and say, okay, who has maybe the easiest obstacles to overcome? Whose obstacles are there that seem to be more manageable? And look at some things around them, like coaching is one thing. I've been listening to you guys, and you're doing an excellent job, and I enjoy it. And, coaching is not something that's been discussed a lot with you guys. And a lot of the callers that call in and maybe have a prediction or want to say something, it's, the quarterback returning or schedule looks tough. And I agree that the schedule is something that needs to be thrown into the mix, but I think coaching has a lot to do with it as well. Defensive coaching changes, I think, are overcome a little bit easier than offensive coaching changes, and that's something that once we get into where I think certain teams will fall, we'll kind of talk about it a little bit more.
That's interesting. What coaching situations? Now, we did acknowledge Chavis and Muschamp, but in terms of on the offensive side of the football, Cole, there's so many teams with question marks at key positions. Where will coaching carry these teams, in your mind?
Well, I think let's look at a team like Alabama. And where were we at this point last season? A lot of folks where I live ready to hand Jacob Coker the Heisman. Jacob Coker was a shoe-in to take this team to the national championship. And obviously that didn't happen. He doesn't start, and Blake Sims becomes maybe the most prolific passer for a single season in school history. So I think Lane Kiffin will have a lot to do with Alabama's offense maybe being more successful than some people think. But we mentioned those hurdles, and you talk about losing some serious production with just Sims, Yeldon, and Cooper alone. And that's not throwing in guys like Quanjo Shepard, Johnson Fowler up front, DeAndrew White on the outside as well. That's production that I don't believe you just plug and go with, but because you have such a good coaching staff in place, and because that staff has recruited the way that they have, you maybe give Alabama more of a benefit of the doubt than you would some other teams. I think offensively you look, and Dari, I knew I liked you, and I knew that we were friends for a reason. I am with you, and you can talk to your buddy Booger McFarland about the stake bet that he and I have with Tennessee and Missouri for 2015. I'm not buying Tennessee either. And I think Mike DeBoer coming in, not having coached the last few years, he's been an administrator. I think Mike Bajakian, when they had to make the change at quarterback almost halfway through the season, they also altered their offense in Knoxville greatly. Maybe Vol fans didn't see it. Maybe other SEC fans don't believe it. But that offense did not just stay the same, and all of a sudden insert Josh Dobbs and everything changed. They morphed that offense into one that was better suited for a mobile quarterback, allowed him to utilize his skills a little bit better, and I credit Coach Bajakian with a lot of that. I've talked to coaches in this league that prepared for Arkansas last year, and they said, Cole, let me tell you something. Jim Chaney's a guy that you can't keep up with his run schemes. He's throwing in 3 or 4 different run schemes, not just plays, but schemes, blocking schemes each and every week. And I think that's going to be a big loss for Arkansas. Again, not one that maybe they can't overcome, but Jim Chaney meant a lot to that offense last year. He and I spent some time together talking about the wham play that they ran with fullback Patrick Lorenz blocking and leading things up for those big running backs. I like a lot about Arkansas. I really do. Really like what the coaching staff there is doing. I like Coach Bielema. Obviously, as a former offensive lineman, I love the way they play football. I could watch them all day. But I think that's another change that maybe some people look at and don't talk about. And that's kind of both sides of those changes, where you look at a guy that has an offense that just has been on all cylinders, and all of a sudden you make a change. It's not always just fun and lollipops when you make that change with an offensive coordinator, because terminology changes, fundamentals change. All of a sudden, different guys are lining up in different places, and it's just not the same. And as a player, you like to get into a routine. You like to do the same things every day, and by repetition, usually you can get results. And all of a sudden, a lot of those repetitions or a lot of those reps that you've had in the past are taken away, and you need to start over.
Cole Kubelik joining us here. Paul Finebaum Show. Dari Nowkhah in for Paul. Of course, Dan Enos comes down as the head coach at Central Michigan, leaves his post to take over on the Arkansas offense. And he does, though, come in with a group up front that is established. He's got great tailbacks as well, an experienced quarterback, and, well, a tight end that everybody, I think, loves to watch. So they're okay. I think they're okay there, but I understand what you're saying about the coaching situation. Now, you've teased us on the picks here, so let's start in the East here, Cole. What are you expecting in the SEC East?
Well, I told you about the bet that Booger McFarland and I have, and that is that I'm taking Missouri to have more wins than the Tennessee Volunteers have this season. I'm taking Missouri to win the SEC East. And see, you knew Matt Stinchcomb was a smart guy, because you said earlier that he's the only person that you've talked to that has selected Missouri to win the East as well. So these offensive linemen, we know what we're talking about here, but I think the most important thing, and again, I'll go back to coaching. Yes, there was turnover on the defensive side of the football, but if you watch Missouri's spring game, and Booger and those guys did a really nice job, they're going to try to keep the terminology the same. The system will stay the same. The players had a lot to do with how they coached themselves in the spring game. And I think at defensive end, so many people are raising heck about, well, these defensive ends are gone again. We said this 2 years ago. The system is there. Marcus Loud and company, I think, can step right in and be those bookends that Missouri needs. You've got a lockdown corner on the outside, a guy who can really kind of take care of one side of the field in Aaron Pinton, in my opinion. You've got 2 quality linebackers in Brothers and Shearer returning. The receiver position is one of concern for me. I think Matty Mock grows up a little bit, understands not to bail out on the pocket, stay with his plays, stay with that system. And to me, Dari, that's a big word with Missouri. System. It's in place. The expectations are there. The guys understand what's gotten them to the SEC title game the past 2 seasons. The schedule is not as difficult as some other in the conference. And I think leadership at quarterback, leadership in the middle of that defense will allow Missouri to go to their 3rd straight SEC championship game.
Yeah, they should not be under the radar anymore. So, Cole, you've got Missouri in the East. You got about a minute here. Give us your West champion.
I'm taking Auburn to win the West, and I think that they do have to find a receiver opposite of Duke Williams. Someone needs to step up, or else defenses are going to be able to focus. The big difference with Auburn and the other teams in the West, and you can break down each and every one, balance. I think Jeremy Johnson will bring balance to this football team. You'll see more 4 and 5 wide receiver sets. He's not going to be able to freeze the backside of the defense with the zone read run plays, but they will push the football back down the field. Look what Malzahn did with Chris Todd his first year at Auburn. Look what Malzahn did when he was at Tulsa throwing the football. He does not have to be a run-first guy. He would prefer it, and he's got a stable of running backs to choose from that are going to be able to help him. They'll be bigger and more physical up front on the offensive line. But, Dari, I will say this about Auburn. More than any other team in the SEC, I think ceiling to floor, there is a bigger gap with the Auburn Tigers than there is at any other team in the SEC. I can see Auburn running the table. I can see them being a 6 or 7 win teams because some of the things that Auburn are banking on, injuries, true freshmen, other guys stepping up, are very critical. And if those things don't happen, I do think it could be a season where Auburn maybe does not live up to expectations.
I completely agree with you on Auburn. I haven't come up with who I think will win these divisions, but Auburn is the front runner for me in the West, but you're right. There are a lot of question marks there. Cole, good talking to you, man. You got Missouri and Auburn, which we saw a couple of years ago. Cole, good talking to you.
Thank you, Dari. Enjoyed it.
All right, Cole Kublik, he is good. He is strong.
Thank you for listening to the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast. Tune into the Paul Finebaum Show every day from 3 to 7 Eastern on the SEC Network or on the ESPN Radio app.